Look around. Every single layer of modern human life, from digital infrastructure to nighttime lighting, relies on an uninterrupted, continuous flow of electricity. For the last 100 years, we fueled this nonstop machine with coal, oil, and gas. These materials offer one undeniable physical advantage. You can set them on fire 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of the weather. But burning those fuels exacts a massive cumulative toll. The resulting carbon dioxide emissions trap atmospheric heat, actively breaking down the global climate system. We can't simply shut off these fuel pipelines today. Because our global infrastructure operates on a just-in-time basis, even a brief lapse in continuous power would spoil refrigerated medical supplies, halt water treatment pumps, and disconnect the digital networks that facilitate every modern financial transaction. We require clean replacements to power the machine. We already have the core technologies, renewable energy sources like solar and wind power, but trying to swap a coal plant for a solar farm reveals a massive physical hurdle. These new generators only produce electricity when environmental conditions are right. Engineers call this the intermittency problem. Every evening, as the sun goes down and shadows lengthen, solar power generation mathematically plummets, dropping all the way to absolute zero. And when high-pressure weather systems stall out over a region, those massive towering wind turbines simply stop rotating, sitting completely and perfectly still. This leaves us with a difficult math equation. How do you keep a 24/7 civilization running on power sources that routinely take the night off? Reaching a net-zero world requires tearing down and completely rebuilding the structural architecture of the electrical grid itself. The first step of that structural rebuild is generation. Solar is rapidly becoming the dominant energy source worldwide, simply because the fuel, sunlight, is completely free and infinitely abundant. Nations are acting on this math at a staggering scale. India is currently executing a sprawling expansion, building massive utility-scale solar parks to capture that free energy across millions of acres. Alongside the panels, we are erecting highly scalable wind farms. These turbines operate as giant mechanical converters, directly translating the kinetic movement of the atmosphere into vast amounts of usable electricity. To maintain a reliable flow of power when the weather turns quiet, grids rely on nuclear energy. Splitting atoms creates a massive, completely stable baseload of electricity to bridge the gaps, though it requires strict management of radioactive waste. Even with vast solar fields, roaring turbines, and steady reactors, generation alone fails to solve the intermittency gap. We have to figure out how to hoard the power we make. This chart maps the exact misalignment we have to fix. We generate a massive surplus of solar electricity, peaking at noon, but human energy demand stays remarkably flat well into the dark. To bridge the night, grids are deploying utility-scale battery parks. We capture that midday surplus, lock it in chemical storage, and discharge it exactly when the sun goes down. We also build geographic physical batteries. Pumped hydropower systems use excess electricity to push millions of gallons of water up a mountain, holding that potential energy until we need to let it flow back down through a turbine. For even longer-term reserves, we look to green hydrogen. By routing renewable electricity through water, we can split out the hydrogen molecules and store them in massive tanks to burn as clean fuel months later. We have the frontline generators and we have the physical storage. The raw hardware is built. But without a central nervous system to direct the current, the entire system would collapse under its own complexity. This diagram shows the required digital brain, the smart grid. We must deploy artificially intelligent networks to instantly balance erratic weather generation against shifting human demand. If a cloud bank suddenly shadows a solar park, the AI detects the drop in milliseconds. It immediately commands the battery networks to release their energy, keeping the supply to the city perfectly level. This invisible, automated traffic routing prevents localized blackouts. It guarantees absolutely no clean energy is ever wasted, moving every single megawatt to exactly where it's needed most. The modern electrical grid is discarding the outdated model of a dumb one-way pipe from a power plant to a living room. It operates as a hyper-responsive, intelligent ecosystem. We are currently navigating the early phases of the global energy transition model. We are actively scaling up renewable generation to force older fossil fuel plants into retirement. This shift is accelerating because the math is overwhelmingly in its favor. The manufacturing costs for solar panels and high-capacity batteries are plummeting well below the expense of extracting and burning coal or gas. We are witnessing a multi-trillion-dollar transfer of wealth. Global capital is flooding directly into massive solar installations, gigafactories for battery manufacturing, and widespread electric vehicle charging networks. The move to net zero is no longer driven solely by environmental policy. When the cost of building new solar and storage becomes lower than the cost of simply running an old coal plant, the transition becomes a mathematical inevitability for the global market. The final target is a net zero world by the year 2050, a timeline where burning fossil fuels is obsolete and smart cities run entirely on clean electrons. This diagram illustrates the completed, flowless loop. The sun and wind generate the raw power, vast hydro and battery banks lock it away, and an AI-controlled grid routes it perfectly to exactly where we need it. The energy revolution is not about making sacrifices to protect the environment. It is an engineering shift, moving civilization from burning finite, depleting fuels to harvesting the recurring physics of the planet itself.